Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we re-diving deep into one of the most pivotal moments of World War II, the Battle of Midway. You've probably seen the movies and read the headlines, but the real story, the one that unfolded in the vast blue of the Pacific, is far more complex and thrilling than you can imagine. This wasn't just a battle. It was a high-stakes chess match where the fate of the war hung in the balance. So, what was the secret to the American victory? It wasn't just about having more ships or planes. In fact, going into the battle, the US Navy was massively outgunned. The Imperial Japanese Navy, fresh off its stunning success at Pearl Harbor, was confident, experienced, and commanded a formidable fleet. They'd planned to lure the remaining American carriers into a trap at Midway Atoll and annihilate them, effectively ending the war in the Pacific. So how did the underdog turn the tables so spectacularly? The answer lies in one word: intelligence. Long before the first shots were fired, a brilliant team of American codebreakers stationed Hypo in Hawaii, led by the unconventional Commander Joseph Verfor, was working around the clock. They had partially broken the Japanese naval code, JN-25. It was like trying to solve a massive, ever-changing crossword puzzle with most of the clues missing. They could decipher bits and pieces, but not whole messages. They started noticing a recurring codey name. AF. Rochefort and his team had a strong hunch that AF was Midway Atoll, but a hunch wasn't enough to convince Washington to risk America's last three carriers. This is where the story gets really clever. To confirm their theory, the US Navy devised a brilliant piece of deception. They instructed the base at Midway to send out an unencrypted radio message, a plain text message they knew the Japanese would intercept. The message claimed that Midway's freshwater distillation plant was broken. A few days later, the American codebreakers intercepted a coded Japanese message. And guess what it said? AF is short on fresh water. That was the smoking gun. They had their confirmation. Now, Admiral Nimitz, the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, knew exactly where and roughly when the Japanese were going to strike. This intelligence was the single most critical factor in the battle. It allowed Nimitz to set his own trap. He positioned his three carriers, the Yorktown, the Enterprise, and the Hornet northeast of Midway, lying in wait, completely hidden from Japanese reconnaissance planes. The hunters were about to become the hunted. When the Japanese attack on Midway began on June 4, 1942, they had no idea the American fleet was already there, ready to pounce. While the Japanese planes were busy attacking the atoll, American scout planes found the Japanese carriers. What followed was a series of desperate and heroic attacks. The first waves of American torpedo bombers were slaughtered. They flew in low and slow, without fighter protection, and were torn apart by Japanese Zero fighters and anti-aircraft fire. It was a massacre. Out of 41 torpedo bombers that took part in these initial attacks, only 6 survived. Their sacrifice, however, was not in vain. Their doomed from the start attacks pulled the Japanese fighter cover down to sea level, leaving the skies wide open. And just as the Japanese carriers were rearming and refueling their planes for a second strike, a new group of American planes arrived high above, the dauntless dive bombers from the Enterprise and the Yorktown. It was a moment of perfect, terrible timing. In the space of just 5 minutes, American bombs slammed into the flight decks of 3 of the 4 Japanese carriers, the Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, loaded with fuel and munitions. They erupted into uncontrollable infernos. In less time than it takes to drink a cup of coffee, the backbone of the Japanese Navy was broken. The 4th carrier, the Hiryu, managed to launch a counterstrike that severely damaged the USS Yorktown, which would later sink. But later that day, American dive bombers found the Hiryu and sent it to the bottom as well. Japan had lost 4 of its best carriers and hundreds of its most experienced pilots' losses from which they would never truly recover. The tide of the war in the Pacific had turned. The secret to Midway wasn't just brute force. It was the incredible work of the codebreakers, the strategic genius of Nimitz, and the unbelievable courage of the pilots who flew into almost certain death. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the secrets of Midway. If you found this fascinating, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next historical adventure. See you next time.